Yeah, so there have been protests across the country because of this, and some riots have broken out. It's been protests. A major issue. Yeah, protests.
Yeah, it's been a major issue. So now we're moving on to, the second part. Now, the interesting thing about this, were you born in 92? When were the LA riots?
No, the LA riots were happening right as my mom was pregnant with me, and she used to work for the Lung Association. And she had some black coworkers, the Lung Association, and she had to cross town. This was back in LA to get there. And her coworkers talked to her on the phone. We're like, hey, don't come in. You need to stay where you don't risk it going out because there are riots going on.
Yeah. So pretty much you were born into this world with riots.
And eventually we'll go out with them.
You're going to go out with them.
Huh?
So, you're going to be living through two major riots about police brutality on the black communities.
Yeah. And there have been many other riots.
There have been more riots. The Ferguson.
About this same thing.
Yeah. Ferguson.
Yeah.
There's another one. Wasn't there one? Was Ferguson, Maryland? Wasn't there one in Maryland?
Baltimore. There was one in 2014. Yeah. There's been a bunch of other ones too. And it keeps happening. Even though we keep saying, oh, we got to do something. And then, people lose interest.
So what do you think about these problems? I've read some things on the internet about police training has been very much cut. So therefore, that's the first thing they're going to cut when their budgets are being slashed is obviously the training of them. So then they can have more bodies on the streets pretty much.
Sure.
They can usually have that.
What do you mean more bodies on the streets?
As in, they can just hire more people. And
without the training?
And then with less training.
Yeah, but, it's a problem of quantity versus quality.
Exactly.
Which, if you've ever been in any workplace, throwing more workers at a problem, if they don't have the right training, it makes things slower and not faster. Practically speaking, that's one way to look at it. Another way that I've been thinking is, there needs to be an overarching body setting these standards for police work. And there really isn't. I have some things on my phone here that I wanted to reference. As far as federally, the Department of Justice can oversee some police misconduct.
Okay.
And there are a couple main laws. Laws that...
Now, do you think, because these police bureaus on a local municipality level, right? Do you think there should be, as in Bolivia, kind of more like a federal...
Okay, so with Bolivia, which has a more unitary government, that means police are they're centralized from the central government. They're spread out throughout the country. They all have standardized training and things like that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept that they all have a standardized training. Now, state and other municipalities have different laws, so police have to learn those, so it's not a one-size-fits-all. But I see no reason why there can't be some really basic standards in there, and there already are some things it's a crime for anybody acting under color of law to deprive another person of a right protected by the Constitution of the United States. There's also police misconduct provision, which prevents law enforcement officers to engage in a practice of misconduct. There's also other things like the Civil Rights Act.
But here's the thing. Who would go after them? Would it be a federal court, or would it be...
Correct. So this is the Department of Justice. And you can file a claim. You can file a report. What do they call it? Shit. Sorry, guys.
Whoops.
You can file a complaint with them, But the only one who can bring these charges, it's not like a person can bring these charges against someone. The Department of Justice is the only person who can bring these charges against these, against state police or anything. So the Department of Justice has to do an investigation with the FBI and then, do the charges, things like that, or do the charges and then. But
that's going to take a long time.
If you're a government employee, government sticks together. I'm not anti-government right now, but
groups of people are going to stick together.
Yeah. So if you work for the state and then the federal level, a little buddy, and that's just how it is. That's how it works. I wish it wasn't. So what incentive does the federal government have, or the Department of Justice have, to crack down on these issues? And there's really no incentive, because it's a cost to do that, and it's an allocation of resources to do that. And so I can understand why the only recourse in this situation is to for the people. We can't file these lawsuits. Only Department of Justice can do that and start investigations. So we need something. The people need something to have a say in how we are policed, because this is a democracy in theory. This is a democratic republic. We should have a say in how we want to enforce our laws, things like that.
There was a thing at the place that I work at, which is a federal agency, which is the person came in who talks about complaints against other federal workers and stuff like that. She said if you do want to file a case, which is under a federal body now, the last one I heard just last week was from 2014. So you're going to have a long time of thinking.
And that's what this is. You can file a complaint to the Department of Justice, but what does that do? That files a complaint, goes with a million other complaints, and no one's, I know they're not searching through each of those and following up with each of them.
I don't know.
So the laws, there is a basic framework there in the laws, but it's
not applicable.
In reality, because there should be standards about what type of force you can use. I was learning earlier today that tear gas actually is prohibited under the Geneva Convention.
Oh, interesting.
To be used in warfare.
Oh.
And there's many treaties that say tear gas can't be used in warfare. However, there are still some countries, the United States among them, where the use of tear gas, they allow it to be used against their own people. Which is really interesting. What does that say when a country is not allowed to use something in warfare because it's deemed by a freaking union of a bunch of countries to be
too hardcore,
inhumane, not they in warfare you're allowed to bomb, you're allowed to shoot, but you're not allowed to use tear gas in war. In combat zones, and yet we use tear gas in against our own people.
Just in everyday life, we use tear gas,
and there's a lot of So what the basics we're talking about is police, and the for whatever reason it has become in our society, there's a difference between police and the rest of the people, and the police are allowed to act with impunity.
Yeah, blue bloods. That's pretty much.
And police, if you know policemen, they really stick together.
They do.
No one wants to go.
In fact, I think the hiring process is that you have to be there for a few months, and if they like you, if you get along with it,
you gotta be one of the boys.
Then you can stay.
You gotta be on their page, and it's seen as a family, and it's something that I don't fully understand.
Yeah, we against them.
But what it becomes then, this mentality of us against them. We have us and the civilians.
Yeah.
And the public is just garbage because all they see is people who are troublesome, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's the amount of what they're allowed to do. You know, they're under trained. Traeger discipline is a big thing. I was hearing a police officer talk who wanted to do reforms in his county or whatever district, in his department, and he put in some reforms, but he also said that some of his favorite policemen that he likes are have experience in combat, you know, because they have such good trigger discipline. They will not shoot. And guns and police are another topic for another day.
Yeah, especially that when you see pictures of the protests and with police, even though they may be using rubber bullets, but a lot of times with how you're supposed to be trained by the military is that you never put up your gun unless you're right there ready to shoot, versus like these policemen running in with their guns blazed like
Correct.
That.
You run in like the
like that.
Another thing, rubber bullets. It sounds they're rubber. They're no, they're very a projectile made of a dense rubber, which it is. It's almost like a plastic that hits you, like it breaks your bones. And they're not used at the right range because police aren't trained to use them at the right range. And that's with tear gas also. Tear gas, you cannot really control where tear gas goes. And even the tear gas manufacturers state that you cannot shoot tear gas canister. It's not intended to be shot at people. Okay. Or death may occur. It says that on the tear gas canisters. Yeah, of course. So the only way to control where the tear gas goes is to aim it towards the ground, and that'll control how far it goes. But it's like that takes a lot of skill to do. Yeah. Number one, I don't think tear gas should be used. Number two, like tear gas canisters, they're not being properly shot according to the manufacturers, and they end up like killing people. Okay, that's horrible. They say it's non-lethal. It is lethal. And that's why it's not allowed in warfare.
Yeah, I think they're trying to do like a car manufacturer type way of it. Of hey, that faulty brake isn't lethal. You're just using it wrong. Yeah, same thing. You're just trying to keep off that liability. So yeah, there's a lot of things with the police. It's very hard to dissect it because at the same time, yes, you want more funding towards them, as in training wise. Yeah. You don't want funding to militarize. But we don't want that
funding allocated to a militarization of the police, which in Clackamas County at least, there is been a militarization of the police. You can see, you can go and read lists of what they have, and it's all surplus, Army surplus stuff. Like they get Humvees, which are fine.
Now is this
but things like weapons and other what they call crowd control measures, which are straight from the military.
Is this about like how schools can apply for grants, but only for certain things can the money be allocated for? So it's like a high school applies for grants.
So I guess we could. So the federal government actually gives. The Department of Justice gives money to police departments. And what they can actually do is say that this allocation of money, or even on the state level, the state can say, or the county can say, okay, the allocation of this money is for this specific area. Or in order to receive this money, you have to show that we're watching, show that we're you're following guidelines, or you're putting things in place, and we have to see change, and there's a whole review. This is how nonprofits work with their funding. We need some change, like yesterday.
Yeah, it's a very tough thing
because something so simple as now. When I was younger, I trained in Aikido. Adam, I think you were in Aikido
Northwest.
For a little bit too. Aikido Northwest. Craig Fife, if you're watching.
He has a great
Hello,
truck.
Sensei. He's a great man, great truck. Why I like Aikido is the whole point of Aikido is to not only protect it's self-defense, protect yourself, but you also need to protect your opponent. And the way it's done through various holes and things is kind of using the opponent's momentum against them. But the main thing is to protect yourself, and then also try to do no harm to this other person. And there are there's a whole bunch of different pins and things specifically created in Aikido, which immobilize a person essentially, but do it in a way that's not harmful, non-lethally. For example, if you put someone on the ground and I hold you by your shoulder and put your arm up, and some other pins like that too, that's no matter the size difference between me and you, or let's say I'm someone who's like, I weigh like 120 pounds, you're like 300 pounds. Even if I put that force in the right place, you're not able to get up. Oh, okay. It's really easy to learn the right way. It probably would take a few hours of training. One thing that would never be allowed in an Aikido dojo is to put any pressure on anyone's neck ever. And in most police departments, you're not allowed to put pressure, and even in the one that George Floyd, even in his district or municipality that he fell under, that the police were part of, there was a charter that said you're not allowed to use that kind of force on someone unless it's like you're in grave danger or something. Even then, I'm hard pressed to find an extreme case where you need to put your knee on someone's neck. And so for a basic understanding of how humans work, you know, there's a reason why we don't use sleeper holds or choke holds or anything like this to subdue a person, and that's because there's really, the outcome of it is so devastating. It has the potential to kill pretty easily too.
Now, do you know who's a big Aikido expert? Actually,
who's that?
Steven Seagal.
Oh, really?
He was actually one of the first to go to Japan and actually open a dojo.
Oh, yeah.
And he was accepted by the Aikido community in Japan. Yeah. And then it just went downhill from there.
Yeah.
But they should.
But that's a really Aikido's a great instance of a type of self-defense or subduing a person that is not harmful to the person, does not cause lasting damage. And isn't that what the police are supposed to do, is to serve and protect? Not only are they supposed to serve and protect the law-abiding citizens, but they're supposed to also protect if you're in police custody, you're under police protection. Like, they're in charge of making sure that you're alive and okay, which is why, you know, we give prisoners medical attention, not as much as we should, and that's another debate. But that's the reason why we don't just let people die when they're in protective custody. Yeah.
Okay, so a thing from the police, I'm just still thinking about, yes, we should. Now, the whole thing about the divestment or the investment of police, just now, the mayor of Los Angeles divested like $150 million from the police force to put into the black community. Now, I don't know if that, when I understand how that'll help one aspect.
Yeah, the symbolic gesture of that things and money going towards the black community. That's
fantastic.
That's really good. But detracting from
the police.
Like, are they going to get more underfunded and more
lenient
on things because we're not getting paid anyways? So fuck stuff. Everybody.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't happen like that. I hope it happens that it's the police are wake up by this and say, okay, we do have to change something.
Yeah,
Portland Public Schools, I just read, is they're no longer allowing armed guards.
Oh,
they finally decided that they're not going to have armed officers in their schools anymore. Ted Wheeler declared that like 6 hours ago or something.
Okay,
it's interesting. You also see like Portland police, people kneeling for the Portland police kneeling too
at the same time. Tear gas.
at the same time, tear
like
gas.
2 hours later.
Yeah, it's this. Yeah.
Now, what do you think? The big thing, what's been going on in the news media, is about all this vandalism, all this rioting, stuff being broken.
So,
what do you think about that?
Adam, do you remember when we went to Vancouver, BC?
Hell yeah.
Okay, we went to Vancouver, BC right after some riots that decimated a lot of the businesses there. You remember what the riots were over?
It was about the NHL championship, right?
Yeah, and you got a bunch of drunk people together watching this championship, the NHL, and it wasn't even because
they won, right?
They won, yeah.
They won.
It wasn't because they lost or anything. They actually won. And then they just started rioting and looting.
Both cities too. That's the funny part.
Yeah, right.
They're both
right.
They're both
cities at the same time.
Yeah,
rioting and looting. So it happens, and it's a thing that crowds, crowds can't get out of control, and it happens. Do I approve of violence or destruction of property? Violence, no. I'm diametrically opposed to violence. But as far as what did I say? Destruction of property. Well, okay. As a small business owner, I don't want any small businesses to be destroyed. As people's life savings in there.
Yeah.
I don't think property should be destroyed. However, I can't control if it happens or not.
That is true. Now,
people bring up the argument fucking Target can get destroyed because they have insurance, things like that. And they're this segues, I think, into a point you wanted to make. Target, which is a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Now, wait. Before we lead into that, I read there's been a famous Facebook quote or post or Instagram post. It was by a teacher, and she says that when a student reacts or interrupts by throwing a fit or something, they are participating in a trauma that they're creating. You have to stand by them.
Sorry, if
so if the kid acts out, the kid is getting violent and throws a punch or something, you as a teacher are supposed to recognize that they have trauma from the violent incident, and you're supposed to stand with them.
Okay, interesting.
Which is
I don't completely get it because I think that the word trauma and things like that are misappropriated.
I just think that's just too. I'm kind of losing.
But I will say, I think this is a better way to put it. I used to work in music therapy in facilities with mental health or people with disabilities, especially mental hospitals, psychiatric facilities. You do get people who are not in their, don't have all their facilities, and they can get violent. But what you do is you never ever escalate the violence. Yeah. Ever. That's like rule number 1 is don't escalate the violence, because that's just going to cause more harm. Yeah. It's all about de-escalation. And I was thinking that with police too, like even in healthcare professions, even as music therapy, or when I went to a day center for people with disabilities, even if the person that I was working with seemed to be like they're probably brain dead, or they're in a state where they're not aware of what's happening, you have to constantly be narrating what you're going to do and asking. And it's a policy to just always ask, hey, I'm going to take your hand now. Can I take your hand? Okay, I'm going to take your hand now, and I'm going to move it here. And you're constantly doing this narrative. And that's partly to cover your ass. And also because there's a thing about this person has autonomy. And we do that. Doctors do that. And even in like settings, I don't know, in the rest of the world, you do that. And for some reason, policing, you're just allowed to like do whatever you want without respecting the person's rights.
Now I think about the police, what the training they've been through. I forgot an English teacher who is also part of the National Guard on his weekends. Mm-hmm. He kind of explained it that it is about controlling the situation. It is not about whether it's escalating or de-escalating. It is about
about control. Yeah. Control. So you see that in the video of George Floyd, that police officer with the knee on it they just wanted to control the situation. That's why they don't want any bystanders at all. We're gonna mace you if you look. Don't you dare. They get so stubborn in there. We're in control that they won't even admit a fault of their own. To the point where they let someone die because they didn't want to be seen as like, oh no. They just kind of double down. It's a weird psychological effect. It's MMA fighting is all about like submission. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I don't really like about MMA because that's why I love Aikido, is because Aikido is not about submission. It's dominance. MMA is about dominance. Did I say submission?
You said submission.
It's about dominance and submission. There can only be one person that's dominant. Aikido is much more level playing field. It's
more of like a dance.
It's more of like a dance. No, but it's all self-defense oriented. And how can you defend yourself against multiple opponents, things like that. But you are not trying to be dominant. You're not trying to go eye for an eye.
Which is a lot of the police force does feel a lot of the time. That we have to get back at the civilians.
Yeah, or like we have to maintain control. Above all else, maintain control.
Yes.
Law and order. Law and order.
And a lot of the problems that people always try and bring up is that policemen, policewomen, often don't live in the communities that they are serving or that they're in. They don't really understand who the people are, where they're coming from, what the trials are living there, how the schools are. Yeah. All that stuff. Or even like what are the jobs?
And I've heard in places that's like things like beat cops that they used to have in your neighborhood. Yeah. That would be in the same block every day. They know everybody in the neighborhood. They get to know who does what, and it is a very effective form of interacting with the community and making the community safer. Because you're not just approaching each incident with no background information whatsoever, just coming in and say, I have to subdue this person, and if they're not complying with what I say, I can do whatever I want because the law says that I am the commander, and you are the civilians need to.
Now, here's an interesting concept. As a person who does deliver mail, but does not represent the entirety of the USPS, nor will I enact that.
Nor will he ever represent.
I never represent that. But mailmen do understand the neighborhood since they're there every day.
Correct.
Do you think we could somehow get like a policeman, mailman hybrid going on?
Actually, that would be a great thing.
Because, like, you see it you interact with the same people every day. The dogs love you because you're there every day.
That would be a pretty cool thing, actually. That's a pretty interesting idea. Number one, it would give those policemen something to do besides write me traffic tickets.
Right?
And number two, it does get them to know their community better. I like to think of an effective form of policing is the police are really there to serve the community. As in, if an emergency happens, the police can respond. They're there to get to know the community. And keeping people off of drugs is part of that, I guess. Give kids stickers, Slurpee coupons.
There's talk with the kids. Yeah, there's always like the police activities league. Yeah. There's that been going on
because you don't want because it's all about early intervention with children, and you don't want them joining gangs, things like that.
On doing that,
so it's really effective when police now. And the other thing is building trust in the community between police officers and a community. If you have police officers in a community that are very integrated, they know people there, they understand the community, and the community understands them, you know, they can kind of work together to solve problems of the community, which I see is what police officers are there to do, solve problems of the community. But more often than not, it's not like that. And so you have a community who doesn't want these police coming in because they're freaking killing people.
Yeah, they act in a very violent manner,
and it's a risk whenever if you have darker skin and there's policemen, there's always a risk. And it gets greater every time one of these things happens. You know, that's just another example of escalation when it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, there is a thing that, hey, why don't we hear about this every day if it's happening every day? Well, the thing is that people don't film it every day. People can't,
or it does happen every day. The thing is that we just have the system of policing the police, or the system of getting this out there. It's news doesn't want to show it because it's another thing, and so it erupts in these
these big clashes, just like a bunch of tension just being released.
Yeah, or people saying, "I'm sick of this. I am so sick of this."
Yeah, it is tough.